This is the PTI podcast.
Welcome along to this PTI podcast. Today we're talking about the power of data and digital in delivering key communications in sports venues, partly against the backdrop of COVID-19 and stadium reopening and more widely into the future. I'm delighted to be joined by four guests today. We've got Bella and Jessie from a PTI perspective and Bill and Matt from Satisfi Labs. So we'll just kick off with some introductions. Bill, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and also the Satisfi Labs platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill Bailey, Chief Revenue Officer for Satisfi Labs. Have spent, again, my career spent a little bit of time in food manufacturing, believe it or not, and then ended up in sports and helped and was blessed to lead, be part of a leadership team in New Orleans for an NBA team. Now I've spent the last decade or so in sports entertainment in the data and communication space. So Satisfi Labs is a key element to the sports and entertainment landscape. Really it came into being, but for a search engine, to be a search engine for brands, right? They're brands, teams, venues. We also do museums and ski resorts and things. They don't have a search engine of their own, right? Fans have questions. They have a lot of answers, and that's not always an easy connection. You can't. You go to your favorite search engine and ask these questions. So what we do is we put all that knowledge in one spot and then connect the fan to that answer very conversationally, very normally on the channels that they normally communicate on. So obviously very important time for us with so much information to communicate right now.
That's great. And then Matt, from a Satisfi Labs point of view?
Sure. I'm based in London, focused on European partnerships for Satisfi. I've been here for 15 years, really paying attention to the digital media landscape and more specifically sports technology and implementation across the piece. And nothing is quite like Satisfi, so it's been a terrific experience over the last year or so.
That's great. And then from a PTI point of view, Bella, could you kick us off?
Yeah, hi, I'm Bella. So I'm the head of digital media at PTI with expertise in digital advertising and sponsorship.
Excellent. And Jessie?
I'm Jessie Hood. I'm Digital Delivery Executive at PTI. My background is in the sports technology industry. And essentially my expertise, I'd say, is client relationship management, digital strategy and product management.
Excellent. And I'm Mike Bohndiek, CEO at PTI, and I'll be your host for today. So diving right in, the sporting landscape has been rocked by COVID-19, and amongst one of the most challenging areas of that is communication. So what have been the core challenges that the panel have seen in this regard?
Yeah, Mike, I think one of the things we saw early on was that people didn't have answers to what was going on in this COVID pandemic, right? They didn't know some of the answers they wanted to give clients, and so it became paralyzing at some point, and that's the wrong thing to do, right? So luckily they shook that off, but it can be, if I don't know the perfect answer, maybe I shouldn't answer it, and that's counterintuitive, right? So you want to make sure you are giving the right information to your fans, even if it's, hey, I don't know yet, or whatever it may be, but you can't go silent. The other challenge they had was small staff. All sports properties and venues have small staffs to begin with, and then when you start talking about maybe some furloughs and things like that, they get really small. So it is a little bit inverse. The questions are growing as the staff shrinks, and again, you have to get that answer out there quickly.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think especially within the sporting industry, being put on pause, and clubs and venues have had to restructure and restrate their strategy completely. As you mentioned about some of the management staff being furloughed and therefore not being able to communicate with fans and the community. They're not going to get specific marketing emails out, club updates, general fan engagement. And I think this is resulting in a lack of communication and for the wider community. Lack of data is also, not being collected, and as no one are using their apps, there's no new content, and this can essentially lead to mass blanketed emails and pushes that are going to almost everyone. The lack of personalization obviously leads to fewer open rates, conversion rates, and significant amounts of churn, especially with app downloads as well. And fans don't believe that things are being personalized or engaging anymore, and essentially can lead them to deleting apps, which of course can lead to loss of revenue as well. So also have an effect on, the marketing communications, which I'm sure, Bella, you would be able to expand on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the communication between colleagues as well as communications between supplier and client can be challenging at the best of times. So in a time when we're all working remotely, the challenge is just amplified. And I think kind of being forced to get work from home ready is going to be a good thing for all businesses, because our lives are so heavily shaped and resourced around work, that we use these times to adapt and actually make communications easier and more streamlined. And in return, we should have more spare time than we used to actually nurture our clients and make sure those comms are going out with, a touch of fairy dust almost, to make sure that they're magical and they're making our clients feel the way that they should be feeling.
We touched there briefly on the challenge of revenues. Obviously, with stadium revenues being turned off, clubs and venues are increasingly turning to their digital assets to create more value. What role can informational items and some of these communication items that we're talking about play a role in that? How can they be part of this plan?
I think kind of that comes in many different forms, depending what it is that brands, clubs are trying to achieve. But the power to seamlessly activate brands within informational and communicational platforms brings with it authenticity and purpose, as opposed to, a brand slap approach that we often see in the sports industry. And by commercializing these assets, clubs are effectively letting the platform pay for itself, as well as broadening its partnership opportunities.
Yeah, I echo what Bella said 100%. We're seeing that in our client base, that where these conversations we're having between fan and brand are getting more and more robust, and they've always been good for activating a partnership, but I've long believed they should be an asset in themselves, that can drive revenue. And now people are starving for some more of those assets. So they're certainly attuned to listening right now, and we're seeing more and more that these really rich engagements that we're having with fan to brand, more and more sponsors and corporate partners are really anxious to be part of that, and it's generating some nice sponsorship revenue for them. Not to mention those platforms become our platform becomes an e-commerce platform and in a contactless world, and we're driving more and more of those ticket sales and merch sales through a conversation, not through going up to a stand.
And whilst there is small pockets of the world where venues are starting to reopen at reduced capacities, it's widely acknowledged that full venues will likely be a 2021 activity unless a vaccine is found. And that's placing a greater importance on digital right now. But that said, the world was already heading in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of research over the past 10 to 15 years about digitalization and going digital, and I think the importance and kind of wider aspect of this is not only specific to sports fans but customers in any other industry. Before COVID-19 paused kind of the global sporting industry, fans solely relied on digital communication, online advertisements, apps with fan content and updates. Fans rely on digital. In terms of digital fan engagement, there's research and statistics showing that I'm going to say a lot of numbers now, but 66% of devoted fans go online at least once per day. For sport-related reasons, 72% of sports fans are most engaged by exciting pre-game content, and 52% of all fans use a tablet or smartphone to access sports content whilst watching televised sports. So it's been more common over the past few years as the club app market is extremely competitive. It's also become so much bigger with venues becoming smarter, integrated AI and high-speed Wi-Fi and apps, and it's becoming more advanced over the past few years. So it's changing the way, sport is not only perceived but even played. It's transformed the way clubs operate, as I mentioned before, and it's transferred their marketing strategy and the way they communicate with fans. And I think also going back to the fact that without sport, as I mentioned earlier, fans and communities have felt they've lost a sense of belonging, especially with sport playing such a crucial role in communities. And as the research suggested, so from now, we have to adapt to the new normal, and that's where digital comes into play, a crucial role, I think, now more than ever. And I'm sure in terms of a marketing perspective, Bella, is this quite similar?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on there about apps and the automation tools and AI. And I think kind of the power of digital apps and automation tools is that clubs are able to create a 24/7 always on media asset that they can commercialize. So, it's not surprising to hear that clubs and venues were already forming a digital strategy because, the need to keep fans engaged just further enhances why those focused on digital were right to dedicate the time to inputting the best possible solution. And that's really where PTI can offer that support in not only implementing the systems, but also in commercializing them, because it can be really, really difficult for people that have quite an antiquated approach to then start commercializing digital assets and understanding their true value. Because, sport is such a powerful marketing platform because it's so emotive. And I think, with the automation tools that Satisfi Labs provide, it's really key in providing that inventory that is going to give a really great return on investment for clubs and in return pay for itself.
Yeah, that's dead on. I mean, we're seeing more and more, as we said, everyone was headed that way in the first place, and now let's go. The time is upon us to make sure those are critical assets for our brands and our teams. The good news is fans want it. So it's not just us creating a brand new thing that may be a revenue stream. Fans want to engage with that brand 24/7 on the channel they want in a very, very personal, conversational way. So this isn't anything unnatural. It's just happening fast and maybe even faster because of this pandemic, obviously.
Yeah, I think Bill's right. And I just to echo something Jessie said, the two-screen experience where people are at home watching a game and communicating on their phones or tablets. What teams and venues are going to experience is that when you finally get off that couch and into a venue, you can take that second screen in there with you. It'll be a 5G experience in the next couple of years, and you'll be able to have access to the team's stats, scores, highlights as it's happening through the team's own branded apps. So the apps themselves are going to have increased utility before the game, during, and after. And I think that's a part of the ongoing conversation that clubs are really starting to understand.
With COVID-19 therefore acting as the accelerator of digital and data-led targeted communications, how can the market adapt and get ahead of that curve?
Mike, one of the ways that our platform helps that is that if you're a client on our platform, you are no longer simply pushing content and FAQs out on a website and an app or some channel. You are hearing exactly what the fans are asking, right? So to stay ahead of that curve, our teams, as they reopen, are super sensitive and allowed to go into our dashboards and see exactly what the questions are, and be very nimble on their communication strategy, and make adjustments on the fly. So because there's no way any of us could predict what the questions may be in this reopening new normal world. And again, those questions aren't just in stadium; they're from the couch or from the local sports pub. So that's definitely a big one, I think, that people can use to stay ahead of the curve. And the second one is the new channels. Stay open to new channels with your fans. Like I said, Apple Business Chat and Google Assistant, and there's lots more that we're helping our clients be future-proof against against all the different communication channels. Don't make them channel switch to find the answer, and embrace them where they are.
Yeah, I think one other item on that is the amount of data that we're able to glean on behalf of the clubs and the leagues is really a key differentiator, because we've had, I think since we started, about 28 million searches across all our client bases, which yields a real rich mine of data around what topics are trending, what brands are important, what marketing messages are resonating. So everyone from hospitality to marketing to sponsorship really benefits from having access to that kind of data.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what you just said, Matt, in terms of, understanding the fan data and, making sure they're using the analytics. And it's vital, especially when looking into consumer behaviors and trends and adapting and personalizing. Obviously, as you mentioned, Bill, communications with this new normal. I think with new integrated technologies and, using a variety of forms of communication, obviously will lead to more in-app purchases and drive revenue as well. It will in the long run, I think, reveal and unlock multiple benefits, such as revealing the unexpected, informs better business decisions, and creates a competitive advantage, essentially getting ahead of that curve. The more you know about how to target your user base, you are staying and being relevant to fans.
Yeah, I think they've all covered it off so beautifully. And I just as a final word, I guess I would say that kind of, in my eyes, to stay ahead of the curve, or to even get ahead of the curve, I think you need to be among one of the first ones to offer that data-driven approach, because, data is knowledge and knowledge is power. So be the first among your competitors to bring the value of data-led targeted communications, and then you can pave the way, and you can be, the business, the organization, the club, the venue, the advertiser, to show that you're one of the first ones to be doing it. You're an industry leader.
Absolutely. It's definitely an extra point on that one, is that innovation generally comes with fear. With innovation is perceived risk as a piece, but I guess COVID has given people the removal of some of that fear to enable them to try new things without it being either a big investment or without it being something that might meet with fan ridicule, because people at this moment in time are sort of humanized. They appreciate the gestures and the things that the clubs are trying. So following on from that, Jessie, what are the best examples you've seen of sort of communications adaptation since we've been in lockdown?
I've actually seen an increase of, personalized new feeds on club apps. It's a great way of having, relevant information based on my location and my behavior, and also the ads that appear on it as well. They're relevant to me. I've seen specific discounts with, certain partners and similar products to what I've been searching for previously, and it does really feel personalized, and I feel as a consumer or fan, get more out of it. In terms of the use of blogs, I think is a great example, and I feel are very undervalued by marketers. There have been blogs highlighting what is going on at the moment, and has all the kind of responses to questions myself as a fan has, especially during COVID-19, and how the sports industry is adapting to that. I think updating fans, with any changes going on in the club, it can be sent out via an email, posted on social, and can even be pushed to a specific audience. And I think, with push notifications as well, when they're short and catchy and they have a good subject line, and obviously you can swipe open to find out more, I think, it will bounce them straight into the page. That's a great way of kind of, driving traffic into a club website as well. Engaging fans who may be inactive as well and pushing them back into the app, obviously keeping churn low and reducing the amount of unsubscribers as well. In terms of, engagement for social media, I think on fan apps as well, I've seen a lot of voting polls, rate the trial goal. There's been some great engaging videos and content of new player interviews, sneak peek into the day in the life of a player or athlete. And again, it's a great way of communicating and engaging with the fan base. Like, as I mentioned, 66% of fans go onto a club or team app once a day to keep updated on any new news. So to have these interactions is fun and engaging, and obviously prompts users to keep coming back. Finally, online quizzes. I can happily say during COVID-19, I've done so many online quizzes. It's interactive with pop-ups. You can play with your friends and family from a distance or even in separate households to still feel connected. And I think in terms of, adapting to the usual quiz circumstances, this was executed extremely well.
Great. And Bill and Matt, from a Satisfi Labs perspective, you guys pivoted really quickly to assist clients as sort of COVID struck. Just tell us a little bit more about that and the journey.
Yeah, I think the big advantage was being able to look in real time at all the questions that were coming in and quickly seeing as early as late February about coronavirus and realizing very quickly that this was not about a beer. And it was initially questions that came into one of our zoo clients, and is it safe to bring the kids? And then it quickly steamrolled into what events are being canceled because of this and what precautions are being taken within the venues to stop the spread. So that between March 7th and the 14th, we had analyzed over 10,000 questions that we could then put into 4 buckets to help our clients with a COVID assistant that managed to field all those questions without a flood coming into the guest services and support. And now we obviously are moving to the next phase in the post-COVID environment and are coming out with yet a new process for our clients and future clients.
Yeah, Matt, that's well said. I think the important thing about our AI is it's context based, right? So as we started hearing things about COVID back in the early days, it seems like a decade ago, the early days of COVID, we quickly were able to understand that as it progressed and our properties started to close, that the context told us that every question was about COVID. There was no such thing as a question that wasn't about COVID, and it was better to push a slightly alter our product a little bit to make sure that we were pushing information out, in this free assistant we provided to our clients and prospects in that time to make sure that information was out there, button based. Let's just get it in front of people. And now, as we see it reopen, it's a great time to turn on the brains again and begin now synthesizing a whole set of new questions. And there's so many new questions we're answering now about the new normal, which has been really fun.
Let's pick up on that. As you say, we're moving into the next phase now. Some venues have started to welcome back fans. That's going to be a gradual process, globally, probably across the next 6 months. What trends do we see coming over that period as fans start to phase back into venues?
Yeah, we're really seeing 2 trends that are upon us, and we've covered a little bit of them throughout this conversation, but we'll go a little bit deeper. One is, as I return back to that stadium, I want to feel comfortable. I want you as a brand or as a building to answer my questions in a very conversational way to make me feel comfortable that I'm safe. I want to ask whatever question I want, and I don't want that on some splash page that looks like your PR department put it out. I have specific questions about my situation, and I want to ask about a lot of different things that are new, the new normal to me. And the more you can make sure that's authentic and credible and as a real conversation with the fan, the more you're going to benefit and bring fans back quicker. The other thing we're seeing is that it is an acceleration we've already talked about is where it's contactless, right? When I do come back, I am going to be no more paper tickets, no more paper money, no more paper menus, and it's not just about you then providing a device for me. I don't want to be around that either. I don't want to touch that necessarily either. I want you to empower my device. And the thought of my personal mobile phone unlocking your stadium for me is a powerful one, right? So I want to see your menus on my phone. I want to use my tickets on my phone, order my food on my phone, and all that. I think that experience really empowering inside my device, I think, is what we'll start to see, are seeing, and we'll see more and more.
Yeah, I think that there'll be a need for a data-driven approach to social distancing as well. Obviously ensuring that fans are tracked and following guidelines, but not only that, but also to ensure that they feel safe and that they're having a comfortable and enjoyable experience, which kind of touched on the way in which they would interact with different platforms to do things the way that they want to do, Bill, such as, being able to do everything that they want to do on their phone without having to compromise their safety. And I mean, that enjoyable and comfortable experience is really just the whole purpose of live sport and entertainment. It's the reason why people go. It's the reason why they go time and time again, and why it makes them feel good, because they feel safe. It's an environment that they want to be in. And I think that's going to be really key in kind of bringing fans and people back to venues kind of post COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with kind of everything everyone said. In terms of, clubs and venues have already started to integrate the post-COVID-19 toolkit, and they have to adapt to the new normal. I think, Bill, you touched on this with essentially maximizing hygiene with contactless payments and mobile ticketing, the kind of use of in-app click and collect for food and beverages is going to be huge, and keeping concession lines to a minimum, avoiding queue build-ups. I know there's some talk about using use of cameras and heat tracking to essentially send notifications to fans who are coming into the stadium and telling them the areas and gates they should be avoiding and they should be using, and the use of kind of safety checklists, as you guys mentioned, Matt and Bella, earlier, about making families feel comfortable. Essentially consumers and fans are going to be a bit kind of apprehensive and anxious about coming back into big stadiums with big crowds. So essentially, with safety information and kind of marketing perspective of sending pushes and emails about housekeeping in ground, where you can find nearest exits, toilets, hand sanitizer stations, medical stations, to obviously reduce that anxiety within customers. I know also there might be some talk about, in terms of personalizing information on news feeds, and again, as I mentioned earlier, about gate opening times and where they should be heading. So hopefully that will, the integration of this will reduce the fear and anxiety in some sports fans.
And just wrapping up then, from each of your perspectives, what are your top tips for clubs and venues on the communication front from a digital perspective? Bill, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I will tell my story about the hope that I really want, that I try to convey to everybody, and then I'll kick it to Matt. But I was blessed enough to be part of the New Orleans Hornets leadership team when we brought the team back from Oklahoma City back to New Orleans post Katrina. And so the message I tell everyone is, in these times, be positive, because sports is coming back, and it's going to come back stronger than ever, because it's necessary, it's unifying. When we brought the team back, it was a struggle, because the city was still in strife, and I'm not comparing what happened in New Orleans necessarily identically to the pandemic that's more global, but it is a crisis. It was a crisis that in the face of that, sports was a very unifying factor. We had opening night finally of a game, and people were in tears on the concourse saying, just thanks for coming back, thanks for bringing the team back. I needed this. After what I've been through. So be positive is the advice I give. This is going to make us all better and make sports stronger than ever before.
Yeah, I would just like to add that, we're all about answers in the voice of the club. We're a way for the club to express itself, but also be there for the fan and provide all the answers from the spectrum of questions that they're going to have about this new experience. And the clubs ought to be nimble, they ought to be open to new channels, and be aware that they can have a voice and make that present wherever and whenever a fan wants to hear it.
And for PTI, Bella, do you want to kick off with your top tip?
Yeah, I guess just to kind of echo what's just been said, I think it's important just to be a leader in digital innovation, and just make sure that when you undertake a project, ensure that you're doing it with full knowledge of the best practice and solution to avoid essentially paying twice.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think, utilizing as much of that customer data as possible in order to create kind of that personalization and for some things that might work for some clubs might not work for others. And I think it's, ensuring that you're working with your fans and obviously seeing which kind of communication methods really work for your club and your fans. I think in order to keep communication personalized, direct and informative, it's about creating a unique, engaging and safe experience for all fans, for the foreseeable future. And again, I totally agree with what Bill says as well, is remaining positive during this time, because when sports comes back, it's going to be bigger and better than ever.
Well, there's something we can all look forward to, and the positivity and hope coming off the back of this. That's all we've got time for today. My thanks to the panel, Bill and Matt from Satisfi Labs, and Bella and Jessie from PTI. You've been listening to a PTI podcast. And if you'd like to find out more about PTI or Satisfi Labs, head over to ptidigitalgroup.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.